So the Bears put up 27 points in the first half, something that's very rare for the Bears as a franchise when you consider the offensive history. And then under the Matt Nagy era as well. But what's up, guys? Welcome into the Fireside Bears YouTube channel. Usayd Kosher alongside Max Smith here. You can follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Fireside Bears. You can follow myself and Max on Twitter at Max Smith ESM and at Usayd Kosher. Max, I know it's been a while. We've both been so busy with work. But the Bears lost on Sunday night to the Packers again. That wasn't a shocker, but there were still a lot of shocking things. But first things first, how you doing, bud?
Doing all right. A lot of mixed feelings. Again, it is what it is here. We do have our personal lives, but we always try to do as much as we can for our team. And yeah, I mean, last night was different. It felt different, but the result was still the same. But there's a lot to break down. So we're excited to jump into this game, regardless. We didn't really think we are going to win anyway, so this really isn't that big of a surprise. But like you mentioned, putting up this many points was a bit of a surprise. Allowing the Packers to put up 45 points is a bit of a surprise. We're going to talk about exactly what went right in the first half, how we walked away after 2 quarters of football ahead of the Green Bay Packers. What did we see? What did we like? How Justin Fields' injury potentially impacted or limited his play yesterday. We're going to talk about why the Bears just couldn't get anything done in the second half, specifically in that disgusting third quarter right out of the locker room. Can't even put up a single field goal against Packers defense. And then we're going to talk about Jason Peters going down and big man Devin Jenkins, the rookie, filling in those shoes, how he did, what we liked and what we didn't like. But again, with a grain of salt, since it was his first official, snaps at the position he was drafted at after a pretty gnarly injury. So let's start off with the first half. You say, what specifically did you like from the offense that you saw in the first 2 quarters of football against a really good Green Bay Packers defense?
Well, the first thing that kind of sticks out to me, and I don't know how many people notice this, but just the fact is that the Bears used so many different looks on offense. And again, you really have to go ahead and you really have to be critical and really nitpicky and know the offense like at the back of your hand to really even begin to get an idea of what those looks were that the Bears were using. Now, partially the reason that some of these new looks, the reasons you saw some of them was simply because of the return of Allen Robinson, which kind of made Darnell Mooney and Demir Bird more expendable. Because if you look at it the last couple of weeks, I mean, Allen Robinson hasn't suited up since like week 8, week 9. Well, guess what? The reality of the situation is that when there wasn't Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney was the only consistent pass catcher on the team. So the Bears were kind of forced to use players like Demir Bird and Marquise Goodwin, as well as Jakeem Grant in different roles. But when I say what different looks we saw, here's what we saw. I mean, I don't think there's been a single time this season that I've seen Demir Bird lined up in the backfield and the Bears have kind of come out in 21 personnel or 22 personnel. Really haven't seen that all that often. Remember, this is an offense. This is a coaching staff. This is an offensive coaching staff, I should say, that really thrives on running 11, 12, and 13 personnel, which again, I always break those terms down for you guys. 11 personnel is one running back, one tight end. 12 personnel is one running back, two tight ends. 13 personnel is one running back, three tight ends, aka your jumbo sets. We didn't see that a lot of that in this game. Now, another thing we saw was that once Jason Peters went down, the Bears were really confident in Larry Borom and Devin Jenkins, their rookie offensive tackles, to hold the fort down. And there was very little attempt to even think about chipping or chip blocking, doing something to kind of slow down the Packers pass rush. Okay. When you look at the Packers pass rush, we have to understand something. It is built from the inside out. Okay. So the strength, the guy that holds that entire Packers front seven together, that's effectively Kenny Clark, the nose tackle from UCLA, who was a first round pick in 2015 or 2016. The reason I bring that up is because Kenny Clark is the reason that the Bears had such a hard time running the football. Okay. But ultimately, those were some of the big things I noticed. And then the third thing, and I know you're probably going to touch on this too, because we're inside each other's heads all the time and we just know what we're going to say because that's just the chemistry that we've developed, is Jakeem Grant. I think Jakeem Grant kind of, when the Bears traded for him, everyone looked at it as, well, this is just a guy that you look at. They just gave up a 2023 sixth round pick for him just because they needed to upgrade their return game and upgrade the special teams. Turns out Jakeem Grant's become probably the most expendable weapon on the offense this year. And what Jakeem Grant is doing is what the Bears hoped Tariq Cohen could develop into under Matt Nagy. When you look at that, I believe it was like a 46-yard touchdown pass. By the way, that was counted as a pass, even though it looked like a handoff, per NFL GSIS, which a lot of us credentialed media people get because we write for credentialed websites. That right there was a touchdown pass, and that's something that the Bears ran in 2019 in week 1 under Matt Nagy and Mitch Trubisky, but unfortunately Tariq Cohen fumbled the football. So a lot of stuff that we've seen in the past, a lot of new stuff too, but an offensive explosion nonetheless.
Yeah, and really it was facilitated by a completely new wave of energy, a breath of fresh air in this offense that we haven't seen since Justin Field last took against the Steelers on another primetime matchup, where Justin isn't afraid to push the ball down the field. What we notice consistently when Andy Dalton is starting quarterback is the ball doesn't go past 7 yards on any throw for some strange reason. He just doesn't trust his arm strength, I guess, which is weird because he hit a fantastic, 1 in a million moonshot against the Baltimore Ravens, but consistently just wasn't there. So watching Justin, make good decisions down the field, able to move the ball. Now, he made one bad decision, a couple, like 1 or 2 bad decisions, right? Unfortunately, this is the NFL, where if you make a bad decision, 9 out of 10 times you're going to get burnt really bad for it. It's exactly what happened with Rasul Douglas's pick 6. It's just a bad decision, right? And that stung a bit because he was making good decision after good decision. Specifically, it was a 3rd and short. Packers ran this really nifty, smart little cover thief where they were completely disguising their zone. And Justin Fields looked to the left, realized at the last second, noticed that Allen Robinson on the right side of his body is going to be open on a little 5-yard hitch, immediately flipped his hips, threw the ball, first down. Something right there, like the small, minute play, right? It's just a simple 3rd and short, but he recognized the defense and he took what they were giving him. He was doing that for the first 2 quarters consistently, right? Outside of staring down Darnell Mooney, throwing kind of a bird out there to Mooney, which Rasul Douglas is going to take that all day long. It's like watching Kyle Fuller. What Kyle Fuller did to our offenses. I guess we got a taste of our own medicine there for a little bit. But what did he do? He immediately came back, ran the Damiere Byrd touchdown, which is, again, we've seen that play. Literally, I think it's called hatchback angles in Madden, by the way. Anyone who likes to play Madden, it's literally a similar play design. The idea is, well, the middle linebacker isn't playing very hard in the middle of the field, so let's get our really shifty guy who's able to make men miss, go right to the middle of the field since there's nobody there. Guess what? It worked. Nobody was there. That's how you score a touchdown in the NFL. So what really impressed me, though, for the first 2 quarters of this game wasn't only player execution, but it was scheming, specifically from the offense and the defense. Aaron Rodgers couldn't move the ball downfield. It was very clear that Sean Desai schemed his defense in practice and made it very, 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 very clear that MO for Aaron Rodgers was eliminate the deep ball. It wasn't there for the first half, unless you count. I don't even remember who was it. Was it Marquis Christensen or that was on Devontae Adams? I don't remember who it was. But
Xavier Crawford, who got burned twice, by
one
the
of
way.
our guys, one of the guys who should be on special teams that are starting on this defense. Of course, that opportunity is going to end up in a deep ball touchdown. But the Packers had to dink and dunk their way down the field. And of course, they're going to be able to do that just because of who they have at quarterbacks, the talent that they have in this offense. But what was noticeable is the Packers have had their way with defenses across the board and getting the ball, moving the ball downfield. Against the Bears, they had a game plan that wasn't working. They had to switch to the dink and dunk. They ran pick play after pick play after pick play because the deep ball was gone. It just wasn't there, which is something that's incredibly impressive, right? Here's the thing when it comes down to good coaches versus bad coaches. Mike LaFleur knows how to come out in the second. Matt LaFleur knows how to come out in the second half. He just does. Every time we play him, if we're doing really well in the first half, guess what? He's better at making halftime adjustments than Matt Nagy is. It's just true. You can't deny that fact. The Packers are very much a good second half team. Look at their statistics. They outscored their opponents in the second half overwhelmingly on average. So that wasn't very surprising. The Bears come out and lay a dud in the third quarter. That's kind of been a staple of the Nagy era, is lack of halftime adjustments, lack of execution and game plan. But Bill Lazor was calling a heck of a game for the first half. What really upset me, and we'll jump into that second half, but before I just want to preview that, is David Montgomery being absent in the second half and getting the call to touch the ball once in the entire second half. That cannot happen. But before we jump into that, let's talk specifically about Justin Fields. He was playing hurt. He said he was 90 to 95%. He said on Thursday it finally stopped hurting when he was laughing or sneezing with his ribs. He was wearing double protection shirt, so he had some extra padding there. Not that would really do anything against guys, 300-pound linemen that are completely putting their entire body weight on him like he's getting hit by a semi-truck. But, he was out there. He's a gamer. He's going to really put everything he does or has on the line. We know that with Justin. He's an incredibly tough guy. But what did you see out of his play yesterday to indicate that he was a little bit limited by his injury, if you saw anything at all? Because it was really hard to see that.
Well, first things first, let me get this out of the way. And I tweeted this, and a lot of the things I tweet, by the way, actually come to fruition, which is why you should be following us anyway. Because again, you're talking about the guy who said the stars were aligning for Justin Fields to be drafted by the Bears 4 days before it actually happened. I also called Trey Lance to the 49ers even before any other national media outlet did. So Twitter, you should give me my check mark because yeah, I've applied 5 times and been denied every single time. But let me say this, and let me just say this. There are people out there who thought Justin Fields played a bad game last night. I don't know why we keep coming up with this narrative. I don't know why people have kind of started to shift towards Justin Fields as Mitch Trubisky 2.0 after whatever 7, 8, 9 starts. But we need to get something straight. We need to get something straight that it's hard to really judge Justin Fields and fully judge him because at the end of the day, the Bears offense is so bad around him that it's difficult to really kind of bring up this argument of, is it Justin Fields or is it the Bears offense? The answer is simple, guys. It's the Bears offense. Okay. Last night, what we saw was a quarterback with fractured or broken ribs having to play hero ball on nearly every single play of the game. Why I say that is very simple, ladies and gentlemen, because when you look at Justin Field from week 4 all the way till now, we've seen the adjustments and we've seen the development. Okay. It's not just the spin moves that have now turned into slides when he's rushing. Situationally, he's playing faster. Sunday Night Football does a great job of providing advanced analytics that are not Pro Football Focus. Justin Fields is getting rid of the ball in like 0.4 seconds, okay? Or under 0.4 seconds. He's right around like 0.35, 0.36, okay? The best quarterbacks in the league, well, they hover around 0.30 seconds, something like that. The point is Justin's playing faster. He's also understanding that in this league, while it would be great to have a downfield explosive passive offense and have the 70, 80, 90-yard bombs down the field to Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney, sometimes, you know what? The 9, 10, 11-yard hitch or crossing route is equally as good because you're taking what the defense is giving you. A lot of people didn't see that. A lot of people also do not understand basic quarterback mechanics, and they don't realize that basic quarterback mechanics is not just good footwork. It's not just good mechanics. Your front foot always needs to be pointed towards the wide receiver you're targeting or the playmaker you're targeting in the passing game. All right. Your back foot kind of serves as a strong anchor and base. Okay. You need to be able to, when it comes to the upper body, fully rotate your hips and get all your torque to step into that throw. When you fully rotate your hips and you're fully able to do so, you know what happens? Your throws are going to be more accurate. That's one of the big reasons that Mitch Trubisky struggled, is because his footwork was never in sync with his upper body. Okay. And he was never able to fully turn his hips, get all the torque into any throw at all. All right. Justin Fields was limited last night because every time he would try and step into a throw, and granted, there were some wobbly balls, by the way, but those wobbly balls were simply because he could not step into throws and fully rotate his hips because he knew his ribs would start hurting. So you're talking about a quarterback that was limited. So for people to come out and say, well, Justin Fields really wasn't playing well, let's just do this. You know what? Let's say this. He played better than a lot of people expected, played better than a lot of people probably thought he would. And then on top of that, at the end of the day, you know what? He knows when to run with the ball rather than just take off. How many times did we see a third down situation last night where you're looking at it and you're like, okay, you know what? This guy's going to get sacked. Well, guess what? Justin Fields ran off and the Bears got the first down. So the point is that, yeah, Justin's injured right now. He's had his fair share of, you know, dings here and there. He's been injured, but you know what? He's still playing hero ball because the Bears situation, unfortunately, just calls for him to do that. And guess what? He's damn good at hero ball too.
Yeah, well, 100%. What I think is noticeable was the lack of zip on his passes, right? Like this is a kind of a tough statement to make, but I'm just going to put it out there. If Justin Fields' ribs aren't as banged up as they are, that interception from Rasul Douglas doesn't happen. One of his bread and butters are those 5 and outs. He's really good at those. That's what got NFL scouts really excited because he can make those everyday NFL throws. He's really good at 5 and outs, 10 and outs. It floated, and I haven't really ever seen him throw a ball like that where it just floats up there for the cornerback to just say, no, this is mine now, right? So that obviously was indicator number one. Instance where he makes a man miss, does a crazy spin, tries to, dunk it over to Jimmy Graham for a first down. It's a little bit short. He's on the move, trying to get Cole Kmet, who's posted up beautifully, boxed out his man in the end zone, like the big man that he is, using his big body, which is great. We love seeing that out of Cole Kmet. Passes just to outside, right? It's like those little details that just weren't there that are typically there. And you kind of have to say, well, I wonder if it's because he was a little banged up, right? And I think that's a totally legitimate excuse, 100%, because he was making good decisions. He was making good plays. There's really not much that he left out there on the field. And you just have nothing but good things to say about a kid who comes out here, he puts everything he has onto the table, gets banged up, comes back, gets the offense excited to play, puts up 24 points with the assistance of the special teams, of course, in a quarter against the team's biggest rivals, Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field. Completely takes the crowd out of it for an entire quarter or 2 quarters, right? Like dominates our rival in 2 quarters, and then he unfortunately was just on the worst team, right? Like the Packers are just a better team all around, better coaching staff. At the end of the day, that's just what happens. But you cannot deny this team's effort to fight, even though they have a coach who 4th and inches when the game's on the line decides to punt his career away by punting the game away, right? Like you can't blame him for that at the end of the day. And he put the team in opportunities to win. He put the team ahead at half. He was moving the ball. You put that ball in his hand on a 4th and inches like that, probably going to get a first down. It blows my mind that you don't trust your rookie quarterback to do that, especially when he has been balling out, right? Like, I don't know. At this point, like nothing, it doesn't even anger me anymore. It's just more of come on, really? Like, are we still doing this? It's just tiring. It just gets tiring. So, I can't imagine what Justin's going through. Hopefully he'll just get better. There's a lot more games left for him to get better. And that'll be something exciting to watch is exactly, we'll look at his week 18 film versus his week 1 film, or sorry, week 3 film and go, where is he then and where is he now? And already just off of anecdotal evidence is far, far, far ahead than where he was when he started, right? And that means he's only going to get better. Granted, we surround him with the tools and the supplies to get better. So why couldn't the Bears get anything done in the second half? My answer before I let you jump in is because it felt like the team didn't want to. It felt like the defense came out completely flat-footed. Offense came out calling completely incorrect plays. David Montgomery was used once in the entire second half in a handoff, right? It makes zero sense to me. The zone running was working because it has been working consistently. You can't run at the gut. Kenny Clark's and Sam Mustipher. It's going to be Kenny Clark all day. Sam Mustipher doesn't have that strength like Kenny Clark does. Okay, push it out the tackles. Devin Jenkins is kind of bullying Preston Smith outside of a hiccup there. Okay, Larry Borum's having a fantastic game. No. Let's just throw ridiculous play calls that ultimately aren't going to get us any yards. And by the way, we're going to punt the game away multiple times because we just don't want it. We just don't want it as bad as the Packers do. And they're at home and they're going to the playoffs very soon. And we want to make sure that the route to the Super Bowl goes through Lambeau Field because we're just generous division rivals, right? That's what it felt like. It was ridiculous. It was defeating. It felt like a team and a coaching staff who said, you know what? I don't get paid enough for this. Bye-bye.
Look, I want to go back to the first half for a second here because you saw the adjustments that Green Bay was making. You saw that when the Packers game plan, the foundational game plan of the Packers going into this game was, hey, we are going to take away Justin Fields' legs and force him to be a passer the entire game. And you know what? That didn't work because if you saw early on in the game what happened, the Packers were so hell-bent on containing the edge because they knew, hey, if Justin Fields gets a shade of daylight, guess what's going to happen? This kid's going to burn us with his legs time and time again. And then when they realized that that game plan wasn't working, they basically said, okay, cool. You know what? The Bears are going to roll Justin Fields out. And so forget about protecting the edges. We're fine if he gets that 7, 8, 9 yard rush. We're fine if he gets those 5, 6, 7 yard short passes. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to take the deep ball away from Justin Fields and basically say, hey, the entire second half, we're going to force you to pass it short to intermediate. And that's about it. So that's why the Bears couldn't get anything going because Justin Fields was consistently hitting some of those short passes. But at the end of the day, how do you complement a short and intermediate passing game? By having a outside zone game, all right, in the running game. And the Bears didn't have very much outside zone runs in this game that significantly made you go, okay, you know what? This team is going to keep the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. And so there's kind of this notion we talk all the time about what is complementary football, right? There's complementary football where the defense is helping the offense and the offense is helping the defense and the special teams is helping both units. But then there's also complementary football on a micro level on the offensive side of the ball where you need to be able to complement your short and intermediate passing game with a pretty good running game. And the Bears, unfortunately, the running game was completely non-existent. I don't know why you have this three-headed monster of David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, along with Damian Williams. And unfortunately, what was happening is you were not kind of utilizing any of them in those two back sets. The one time the Bears came out in a two back set formation that really worked, you know who was the guy in the backfield? Damiere Byrd. And typically that's a play that should be designed for David Montgomery to be in pass protection and Damian Williams to be the receiver because you're basically telling the defense at that point, pick your poison. And at the end of the day, you know what? That 54-yard pass that went to Damiere Byrd, that traditionally should have been Damian Williams anyway, but Damiere Byrd has more burst and speed. So, yeah, way to take advantage of the player's strengths there. That's what happens when you know your player's strengths. But the Bears also couldn't get anything done in the second half because the secondary was just breaking down and being picked apart. Okay. Green Bay basically saw, hey, first half, what did Jalen Johnson do? Which side note, Jalen Johnson had a great game. Jalen Johnson shut Devontae Adams down. And if you take out all the receptions Devontae Adams got from the slot, it's safe to say this was Devontae Adams' worst game of his season, probably one of the worst games of his career because he was non-existent in the first half. Second half, Green Bay realized, you know what? We're just going to continue moving Devontae Adams around. And this is something that teams are doing more and more now anyways. They're willing to say, okay, cool. You can play the X, you can play the Y, you can play the Z2, you can line up inside the numbers, you can line outside the numbers, you can line up on the line of scrimmage. They're willing to move the wide receiver one around. And the Packers realized, okay, you know what? We're better off just continuing to move around Devontae Adams to get this passing game going. And as soon as you started doing that, and as soon as they started doing that, you started seeing the results. Pass game got clicking, run game got clicking too. And at that point, it was over for the Bears. So if you want to talk about what a turning point in the second half was, it was Green Bay basically saying, we're going to move Devontae Adams around and call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, in taking another step beyond that, it seemed like it was Green Bay noticing the amount of space that between the second a Packer would receive the ball and the amount of space that Packer had between the nearest defender. And they were dinking and dunking in the sense that we're going to take a 5-yard under because it's so soft. They're playing really deep, right? Or the secondary is really deep. We're going to get 10 yards after catch just because of how deep it's going to take for the safeties to crash, or how long it's going to take for the outside nickel to crash. So they were taking advantage of that depth all day. And the Bears didn't really react to that, because what do you do in that situation, right? If you pull up, if you try to be closer to the line of scrimmage there, if you try to soften up on the deep half, Aaron Rodgers is going to take advantage of that all day. So that was kind of the deal that they made with themselves, was we'll take away the long ball, but we're going to have to be able to crash and make a tackle at the point of attack. Unfortunately, it seemed like it took 2 to 3 guys to bring one Packer down this game. Packers saw that, said, why don't we just continue giving our guys opportunities to make men miss? It worked. Dink and dunk your way down the field. It's how you put up 40 points against a defense who's playing really soft in the under and just doesn't make any adjustments there. So, yeah, no, you're completely right. Devontae Adams had a much better second half because they figured out how to scheme around Jalen Johnson, which is a testament, again, to Matt LaFleur and that offensive coordinator and that offensive staff. They know how to use the players that they have, which is a moniker of a good coach, Craig. So, I mean, outside of that, and even on that's on the defensive side of the ball, and you know, with the offensive side of the ball, I can talk about David Montgomery all I want, but and I will. I just want to bring up this stat, which is frustrating. David Montgomery only had 10 attempts the entire game, right? You know, when the last time he was only given 10 handoffs was against the Cleveland Browns. There's this weird coincidence where whenever Justin Fields needs help from his running backs, it's not there because the offense isn't letting it be there. You know, it's just weird to me, especially because 10 attempts, 42 yards, 4.2 average per attempt. That's really not a bad number, right? If I'm a coach, I'm looking at that number. I'm going to go, yeah, let's give him at least 5 more touches. Let's see what happens, right? You're able to move the ball a little bit. It's not like it's working every down, but you're able to find some sort of success there. So why not try to play it off the tackles? Why not try to play that outside zone? Soften up the middle a little bit. Then we go into the play action territory and try to take some shots downfield, because now they're trying to respect the run. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done, but I mean, it's just the lack of trying, you know, that I think that's really noticeable from this team. Is they just get stuck in their ways. They get stuck in a pattern, and they make it really easy for opposing teams to just completely know what's going on. It's like they choreograph and go, hey, by the way, I'm not going to hand the ball off anymore. Hey, by the way, on first down, I'm always going to run. Hey, by the way, on second down, I'm most likely going to throw a 2-3 yard pass. And oh, by the way, on third down, I'm going to run all hitches or all outs. And that's what we're going to do every single drive. Maybe there's one gadget play in there, but I don't know, unless I feel like it. It's what it feels like watching a Bears game every year since 2017.
Well, right. There's a lot that goes wrong, but there's also a lot of things that seemingly went right for the Bears. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Jason Peters and Drew is right, but hey, the Bears have, under Matt Nagy, have developed a reputation for not starting younger players that have a high amount of upside. Oh, just simply because they believe whatever veteran stopgap is in place is good enough. Okay. There's exceptions to the rule, like Kendall Vildor. But when you look at the state of the offensive line, you have to realize something. Okay. Is that if Jason Peters is not on a lake somewhere fishing and Devin Jenkins doesn't get hurt, Devin Jenkins is probably opening up week 1 against the Rams as the left tackle. If you go ahead and you look at the right side of the offensive line, let's just say Jermaine Ifedi doesn't get hurt, and he's not going to be back on the roster in 2022, by the way. And if he is, it's going to be his depth. what happens is the Bears are not forced to go ahead and start the likes of Elijah Wilkinson, Arlington Hambright, Latavius Simmons, and Larry Borum. And the best of them has been Larry Borum, by the way. So Larry Borum, you could argue right now, of all the offensive linemen drafted in the 2021 NFL draft, biggest deal right now is looking like Larry Borum. I still don't know how Rashawn Slater kind of slipped all the way to where he did to the Chargers, I think, at 13. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day if and when we decide to do a 2021 NFL draft recap video. But the reason I bring Devin Jenkins up is because injuries essentially forced Devin Jenkins into the starting lineup. Last week, when asked about Devin Jenkins, Matt Nagy was basically like, yeah, we're working through it. We'll see. No, there's no chance he starts. He's just going to go ahead and be depth for the final 4 or 5 games of the season. Lo and behold, Devin Jenkins is in the starting lineup. There's a lot to take away from that film, okay? You saw him kind of stepping back in his past sets. You saw that there were times where you could argue, you know what? Maybe his chest was a bit too wide open. As an offensive lineman, the problem with opening your chest up too much and exposing your chest is that defensive linemen are going to take advantage of it, and you're just going to be pushed back into the quarterback. Tevin still played with really good technique. Tevin's functional strength was on display. His athleticism, ability to move properly and just move with ease was on display as well. And his back certainly looked like it was fine the entire time. But the reason I bring it up is because Devin Jenkins kind of playing the rest of this game means that Jason Peters, I don't care if he's healthy, he's not going to come back the rest of the year. There's absolutely zero reason for Jason Peters to be starting again for the Bears anyway. I think he can be a really good offensive line coach, by the way. But ultimately, when you look at Devin Jenkins, I know people are going to sit there and be like, well, he played bad. Outside of the 4 penalties, which are just rookie mistakes, by the way, some of the penalties, let me get this out of the way. I think 2 of them were like false starts. 2 of them were holding. So the 2 that were false starts were just a result of not being on the same page as the rest of the offensive line, along with the biggest elephant in the room, which is the quarterback. The holding penalties were simply because his hands were too high, all right, and just high and inside. And so his hand placement needs to get better, but that's all stuff that's going to come time with anyway. I'm going to hammer this point home. Okay, before I let you go and talk about Devin Jenkins, it blows my mind that the Bears 2021 rookie class, it blows my mind that people are expecting Borum and Fields and Jenkins and Khalil Herbert and Thomas Graham and Daz Newsome and Kyrus Tonga. Well, let me get this out of the way. Newsome and Thomas Graham Jr. haven't even played. It blows my mind that people are expecting the Bears 2021 draft class to come in and perform like Pro Bowlers and All Pros and guys that have been in this league for years. It doesn't work that way. It's ridiculous, the unfair expectation that this rookie class is being held to so far. If this was 2, 3, 4 years down the line, the narrative and the expectations certainly be different. As soon as the calendar hits 22, the expectations are going to be different. Okay, we're going to be talking about breakout season, sophomore slump, stuff like that. But it just blows my mind that people have held this rookie class to such an unfair expectation that most of the time isn't warranted, because when you look at Fields and Jenkins as well as Larry Borum, a lot of the mistakes that are made are just rookie mistakes. When Khalil Herbert makes a rookie mistake, guess what? Most of the time, at the end of the day, it's just something like, okay, he chose the wrong hole to run through, or didn't kind of let the play develop and was a bit impatient there. When Kyrus Tonga makes a rookie mistake, it's just, oh, well, you weren't playing with gap integrity. You decided to kind of read the offense the wrong way. And you know what? As a result, what you could have plugged up and stopped from happening essentially turned into a big gain for the offense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like from Tevin Jenkins. There is a lot that, again, is sloppy, but dude hasn't played much this year. It's just a fact. And him starting prime time on the road against the Packers, Preston Smith, no easy challenge. That's a tough place to start your career. And to say that he performed terribly, is an entirely an accurate statement. Now, he had some issues extending that left leg, trying to get out there to his spot. He was a little bit slower than Preston on a lot of snaps. Preston Smith's a great athlete. Devin Jenkins just isn't there yet, I guess, athleticism-wise, but that's, again, to be expected. He just finished rehabbing in PT. his strength was certainly there, which is something we like to see. That's what we knew we were going to get, more of a mauler guy. And every time he got beat, he just got beat because Preston Smith was faster than him. Or he was just a little bit too high up on Preston, who was just a little bit more low. His leverage seemed okay. All of his footwork seemed all right. He just needs to get a little bit quicker, and that's something that's going to come with time as he learns how fast these guys on the edge are going to play him. And the communication piece there as well is incredibly important. That if there's stints down the line, he and Cody Whitehair need to communicate, right? And they need to tell each other to peel, to chip, and that just takes time with playing and meshing. And fortunately, everybody on this line should be returning. James Daniels in a contract year, without a doubt, he's brought back. He's just too good to let go. Devin Jenkins will anchor left. Larry Bourne will anchor right. Cody Whitehair is still here, and there might be an answer at center in the draft or in the free agency. Pending Sam Musfer is a fantastic run blocker. I still just have worries about his strength at the pass protection. But I guess depending on what Juan Castillo sees in the offseason, we'll go from there. But yeah, out of the sake of time, there's a lot I could say about Devin Jenkins, and then more than likely to make a video on that. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, there was a lot to like. There was a lot to raise some question marks. But you have to like you said, you have to give it a bit of a grain of salt, because you can't expect this guy to play like he's Quentin Nelson out there, just completely pancaking guys every day. We expect some of these rookies to be generational talents because we're hopeful, but at the end of the day, you have to remember that these are 22-year-old kids who either they're generational athletes that are coming out and are completely tearing up the NFL, or they're just standard good players, or they're busts, right? But we haven't seen really anything from any of the rookies to indicate that they're flat out busts. We've seen a lot to like, we've seen a lot to dislike, but we're seeing a young core who's learning and developing. So what we'll see out of Devin Jenkins over the next couple of games will really give us an indicator of where he's at. But for right now, you got to put a stop on any overreaction, take a deep breath and go, okay, well, let's expand the sample size a bit and let's see where we go from there. But that's what I'll say on Big Tev.
Yep, and that's all we're going to say for now. But be sure you're following us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at FireSideBears, guys. We're just dropping content left and right, audio content, podcasts, written content too. Be sure you're following myself and Maxx on Twitter at MaxSmithySM and at Usayd Kosho. We've got a great guest coming on the weekly podcast for you guys, so that's going to be really cool to record that interview. Hopefully drop that Wednesday morning. We'll have some guests on here over the next couple weeks as well. We're going to be bringing back, as the season kind of comes to an end, we'll be bringing back the top of the class to review Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, as well as Zach Wilson. So look forward to that. We're going to get into rookie report cards in the off season. So right now, guys, it's sitting here in mid-December, but we're just getting started here with all the off season content. So make sure you're following us on every single platform. But before that, guys, and before we get out of here, good morning, good evening, and good night wherever you may be. It's been a pleasure having you guys join us this week. Bear down, stay safe, stay warm, and we'll catch you guys next time.